Hakadosh, Boker Or, Masechet Ketubot Daf Kabet Amud Aleph 22a1. You remember yesterday we said that when there were three dayanim that they're sitting to verify the document, and there was an idur on one of the dayanim, which means that there was going to be a claim against one of the judges. Yeah, until they didn't come and they didn't sign, the two dayanim didn't sign, they could testify right on the third dayan, and then they could sign. But once they sign, they cannot testify. So the Gemara says, what type of an irur, what type of claim are you going to come and say against this dayan? If you're going to tell me it's a irur de gazlanuta, and this is how we finished yesterday, we said it's treu treininu. Why? There's two groups of witnesses that come and say, which are the two dayanim, which come and say that the dayan is going to be kosher, right? And the other two, they're saying that he's a gazlan. So therefore, it's 2 against 2. If you're going to tell me that he's not fitting to become a dayan because there was a problem in his family, remember, not anybody could become a dayan. You understand? A dayan has to be somebody of a very, very high hierarchy family. It can be all these things. For example, if it can ani and all these things, right? There's whole questions of this. So he says, you could reveal it. You don't need, as if say, witnesses. You could just find out very easily. So says the Gemara, really, it is an irur of stealing. But the other two dayanim say, okay, fine, it's true, he stole, but we know that he did teshuvah. So therefore, Rav says that only as long as they did not sign, then they could testify that he did teshuvah and he's going to be still kosher dayan. But if not, he's not going to be a kosher dayan. Amar Bizera, says the Bizera. I heard this from Rabbi Abba. He loved Rabbi Abba the Minako, right? And if it wouldn't have been from Rabbi Abba the Minako, Shechachtai would have forgotten it. 3 people, 3 dayanim that they come and they sit down to verify a document, and one of them died. They have to write down Bemotav telata havena v'chaletohi. Right? We are Bemot of tlata, which means we are sitting with 3 people, right? V'chaletohi, but one of them is not with us. So Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, says Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, v'katav bei. But if he wrote in it, shtara dinan nafak lekadmena beidina tu lo tzarich. But if they say that this shtar came out from a bedin, then they don't have to explain anything else, because we know that it's on a bedin with less than 3. So the fact that they wrote down that this shtar is coming out of bedin, they don't have to write anything else. We already know that there's going to be 3 witnesses. 1 minute, yeah? We already know that there's going to be 3 witnesses. So says the Gemara, "V'dilma bedin chatzufu." Maybe it's a bedin chatzuf. What does it mean bedin chatzuf? Like the Shmuel, the Amar Shmuel, shnayim shedanu dinim dinin. Like bedin chatzuf. Maybe be'emet, when you have two dayanim, they could judge, but they're called a bedin chatzuf. Why? What? They don't need 3 dayanim. They need 3 dayanim. But here it says no, it's still a good judgment, but it's a bedin chatzuf. So answers the Gemara, dichtiv bei, that it's written beidina de Rabbana Ashi, the bedina of Rashi, which means for sure the bedina of Rashi, we're not going to make a mistake and verify a document with two dayanim. So therefore, everyone will come and say that for sure there were 3 dayanim there, right? And there were only 2 that signed because one of them died. So ask the Gemara, Dilma Rabbanan, Dever Rav Ashi ki Shmuel Svirale. Maybe the rabbis of the Academy of Rav Ashi, they hold like Shmuel, right? Which means that maybe the Chachamei Yeshiva hold that the 2 dayanim are already considered a bedin. And so the Gemara, it's certain V'amalana Rabbana Ashi, that he told us, Rabbanan, which means since it says Rav Ashi himself told us about the 3, for sure there were already 3 dayanim. And therefore they were only just 2 dayanim that they were the sign, because obviously one died, but not because they're bedin chatzuf, or because we're going to suspect that there are not going to be 3 dayanim from the beginning. Says, now it says, Aisha she'amra eshet ish hayiti ugrusha ani. Imagine a woman that we don't know that she's married. She comes from Honolulu. She comes into the bedin, or she comes to Miami, and she says, Eshet ish hayiti, she was married. She was a married woman. Ugrushani, but she already got divorced. So they ask her, no, where's the get? She doesn't have it. Right? Ne'emenet. She's going to be believed.
Lama.
Says the Mishnah, she'apeh she'asar u'apeh she'iti. What does that mean? Right? Because the mouth that prohibits is the same mouth that permitted. What does that mean? If this woman would have come from Honolulu and she wouldn't have said anything, would I have known that she's a married woman? I wouldn't have known. So if I don't know, so she would have been believed or nothing. She comes, she's getting married, she's doing whatever she wants. That's it. Yeah. So now the Pesha Asar is even better, Shanamik. Right? So now what happens? All of a sudden she comes and she's giving us this information. Right? That's like, for example, right? Somebody goes to the police station and they say to the cops, by the way, I want you to know I ran the red light. Right? They said, what? Why did you do that? No, but it was an emergency. I had to go take somebody to the hospital. So then what would they say? Okay, you know what? You're right. You're right. It's okay. Don't worry about it. Why? Because we wouldn't have known that you ran the red light. So why would we have given them a ticket? We wouldn't have given you a ticket. Oh, that's something different. That's because then if you have a camera, so then that's like edim, so then there's no pesha asar. Right? 1 second. Right? So therefore, right, a pesha asar or peshiti. Says the Gemara, and this says the Mishnah, and this is what the doctor just said. What happens if there's the camera, right, by the red light? Or there's witnesses that she was what? She was an Eshetish. And then she says, Grushani, enanemenet. She's not believed. Why is she not believed? Right? Because again, you don't have hapesha asar upeshitish. Therefore, she has to take out the get. What about now, Amra Nishbeti? She comes and she says that she was taken into captivity. Yeah, Nishbeti. Right? That means the Goyim came, they abducted her. And then what happens? Uteorani. But she said that she was pure. What do you mean she was pure? They didn't actually have relations with her. Says the Mishnah, ne'emenet. She's going to be believed. Why? Hapesha asaro peshitir. I wouldn't have known that she was abducted. So if I wouldn't have known, so that's it. However, though, im yesh edim shenishbet, let's say it's all over the front news that she was abducted. It was all over the place that she was. So and now she says Torani, and she's not going to be believed. Why not? Because we're going to suspect that obviously the Goyim did go with her, and therefore she's going to be pasul to kiuna. The Imeshine said Mawedim. However, though, what happens right now if only after she got married, now comes the Edim? Right? I mean, she went and she got married, and now comes the Edim. Harezu lo tetzeh. She does not need to get divorced. Why does she not need to get divorced? Right? Because the Edim only came afterwards. So since the Edim only came afterwards, she was going to be believed at the time. Says the Gemara on Kavet Mudalev 22:1. Says the Gemara Ravasi says Minayin la pesha asaru pesha itir mina Torah. How do we know that there's such a concept as a pesha asaru pesha itir in the Torah? Meaning, remember, this is the entire thing of our Mishnah, the previous Mishnah. We keep on saying a pesha asaru pesha itir, right? Shneimar, it says in the pasuk ebiti natati laisha ze leisha. It says over there in Devarim that I gave my daughter to this man as a wife. So when the father comes and he says, laish, he prohibited her. Asara on the entire world. Because he says, I gave my daughter to this man, which means he prohibited his daughter. Hazeh, now what's he doing? He's permitting it to this man, right? Because he said, which was the man that he went. So from here, we learn a pesha asaro pesha. Because the second that the father comes and he says, I gave my daughter to someone to get married, he prohibited the daughter to the entire world. The second he comes and he says, but I gave him to this man, now he just permitted him to permitted his daughter to this man. So therefore, the pesha sar or peshiti. So says the Gemara, Chazak u'baruch, lama likra. Why do I need a pasuk bichla? He says svarahi. It's a svara, right? It's only something which is logical. Like what I just told you. You go into the police station and you went and you say that you had to run through a stop sign. The guys are going to come and say, Kol hakavod. Why? Nobody saw you. There's no cameras. There's no nothing. At the end of the day, why did you even have to give yourself in? You came and you did that. Kol hakavod, they're going to tell you. Right? Hu asara, v'usharila. He prohibited her and he permitted her. Why do you need a pasuk? If it's a very simple svara, it's logic. Says the Gemara. You're right. You know why I need the pasuk? Like Ravuna Marav. Says Ravuna, how do we know that a father is going to be believed to prohibit his daughter mina Torah from the Torah? Shneimar, but it says in a pasuk, ebiti natati laish. Yeah, 1 second. Ebiti natati laish. Nekuda. So now the Gemara says, so the fact that he comes and he says, I gave my daughter to a man, right? He just prohibited her. Hazeh lamali. Why do I need then the word hazeh? So he needs the word hazeh for Rabbi Yonah. Why? The Tani Rabbi Yonah says, "Ebiti natati laish hazeh velo liavam." which means that the father says, I gave it to this person, but not to the brother of the deceased, to the Yavam. Which means we learn from here that a Yavam, which is Motzi Shemra Yevimto, that she had relations when she was Meureset, right? He's patur from the knas of the Torah because of Motzi Shemra. Remember, that entire pasuk is referring to Shemra, correct? That entire pasuk, right? That basically the father comes to the bedin, and the father says, right? Right? He comes. What? Who met? One second. So now, there in the case of Motzi Shemra, if the guy's Motzi Shemra, which means he comes to the bedin and he says that she's not a betula. So the father comes to the bedin. The father says, I gave my daughter to this man, and he went and he said bad things about her. Ve'elu betule betin. This is the betulim of my daughter. So what happens? The guy has to pay a knas, right? The guy has to pay a penalty, and he has to stay. He's not allowed to send her away his entire life, which means if she wants, he's obligated to stay married to her for the rest of his life. He can never divorce her, which that's the biggest punishment for him, right? If the power becomes in her hands only because he went and he spoke against her. Because usually, remember, a person could divorce his wife against her will. Here it's the exact opposite. The fact that he went, right? The fact that he went, right? The fact that he went and he did this, he becomes subjugated to her. That now, he cannot. Yeah, of course, 100%. Right? So now what happens is that this is called Motzi Shem Ra. Motzi Shem Ra. He was Motzi Shem Ra al Ishto. What happens now if it's the Yavam Metasis? It wasn't the husband, it was the Yavam, which means she was engaged, right? She was right now engaged to be married. And she gets married to her husband, and then she drops dead. Yeah, he drops dead. Sorry. Okay. Yeah, he drops dead. So what happened? He comes and he says now, right? What happens is that now the Yavam comes and he says that she had relations during the Erusim. So he is Motzi Shemra. So now says the halacha, Motzi Shemra only applies to the husband, not to the Yavam, which means that the Yavam does not have the dinim of Motzi Shemra, and therefore he's patur from the knas. Where do we learn this? We learn this, right, from what we just said, hazeh. Hazeh comes to exclude the Yavam, which means only the father could say, to this man, meaning the father we could only trigger all the halachot of Motzi Shemra laish hazeh. But to the Yavam, we cannot trigger the halachot of Motzi Shemra. And therefore, if the Yavam went and he said, right, that's what it says here, he kidesh adam isha umet beterem nisa. So he died right before getting married to her, right? And the Yavam comes and he gets married to her, and then he says that he didn't find her betula, and they come and there's edim, right? He puts edim shazinta, and then they were finding the edim zorim. The Yavam is patur from malkut and from the knas, right? And if he wants to divorce her, he's allowed to divorce her, right? That means we don't apply the halachot of Motzi Shemra for the Yavam. Motzi Shemra only applies to the husband and not for the Yavam. That's what we learn from the word hazeh. This man. Okay? Nekuda. Okay? We learned in the Braita. Haisha shamra eshet ishani. V'chazra ve'amra pnuyani ne'emenet. Imagine a woman comes and she says that she's married, and 5 minutes later she comes and she says she's not married. She's a pnuya. She's believed. So says the Gemara, what are you talking about? She made herself a piece of isur. What does that mean? A person is able to come to make an isur upon themselves. What does that mean? He's shavya anafshe or shavya lin nafshe chaticha di isura, which means when she comes and she says that she's married, even if she's not married, she becomes married. Right? Why? Because according to her word, she's married. That's like many times it happens, and we teach them not to do this. But sometimes a woman comes and tells her husband, "I'm an ida." 5 minutes later, she's not an ida. So you say, she's not a minute. Why? The same thing. Why? Because even if she wasn't an Ida, now she says she's an Ida, she just made herself into an Ida. But she made herself into a piece of an Isur. Now, obviously, there's going to be Amtela and all these things, which we're going to speak about in a few minutes, but that's the entire concept of, right? This is the entire concept of what we're talking about, okay? Shavya lenafsha chaticha di Isura. She makes for herself a piece of prohibition. So when she comes and she says the Eshet Ishani, she prohibited herself. She was always the Pneuya. Doesn't matter. Now she says she don't believe. So Amar Rava Baravuna says Ravuna, no. If she gave an amatla, right, which means that she came and she gave an excuse. Why did she say that? then she is going to be believed. Right? And we're going to continue. We also learned the right time. She's going to be believed. And there was actually a story. That there was a woman that she was very, very chashuva. She was very, very pretty. People were jumping after her to get married to her. So she said, to everybody, I'm married. All of a sudden, all of a sudden, after a little bit of time, she comes and she gets married in front of everybody. What are you doing? Yeah, you just said you were married. What about now you're receiving kiddushin? She said, no. At the beginning, there were people that were not fitting. So they came to me. There were all these guys. They don't want that. So I went and just said, I'm married. But now I found a good match. Right? I went and I got married. And this is the question, this is the halacha. Right, that was his like nickname. Okay, because he could, he went up to the kingdom right in front of Chachamim and Yusha, and they said, she's going to be believed. So Shmuel comes and he asks from Rav, this was the question I just told you, the exact same halacha. Imagine a woman comes, she tells her husband that she's tmeah. After 5 minutes, she comes and she says she's Torah, right? So she's either an Ida or not an Ida. Make up your mind. Elmaleh, he told him, the same halacha applies in this case. If she gave an excuse to her words, she's going to be believed. Tana mine 40 zimin. That's what we just learned yesterday in the Kinyan Masechta. He learned it 40 times from him. Right? We're going to see it later on also in the Daf Nun Amud Aleph and Ta'anit Chet Amud Aleph. That's what's brought down here in the footnote. Chet Amud Aleph, what we just learned yesterday. He learned it 40 times. Now, even though Shmuel came and he learned it 40 times in order to come and to do this, meaning that this is the halacha, he still didn't want to do that, right? He didn't want to be somech on his words, which that means it is brought down in the halacha that if you want to be machmir, you're allowed to be machmir. Meaning if a woman comes and she tells her husband, she's an ida, right? And all of a sudden, if she comes and she says, no, she's not an ida. So you ask her, why did you say that then? So she has to give an excuse, an amatla. So depends what the matla is. Depends what it is. Sometimes they're good excuses, and sometimes they're bad excuses. But according to Shemuel, right, he didn't meaning that he wanted to be lechumran himself, and therefore she still needed that, and therefore she has to do now shivanikim and everything. Like mama, she became 100% anida. Okay. Which one? There's the Gemara. Tanu Rabbanan, we learned in the Braita. Shnaim omrim met, u'shnaim omrim lo met. Imagine right now, 2 witnesses come and they say that the husband of this woman died, and 2 witnesses that she did not die. Now we're going to Yevamot. So before we were in Ta'anit, we were in Nida, now we're going to Yevamot. Right? You remember we just learned this in Yevamot. 2 witnesses come and they say that the husband of this woman died, and 2 witnesses come and they say that they did not die. Shnaim omrim nidgasha, or 2 people come and they say that she got divorced, or shnaim omrim lo nidgasha, and she's still a married woman. Harezu lo tinaseh, she's not allowed to get married. He said, but if she does get married, lo tetzeh, she does not leave the second husband. Rabbi Menachem Bar Yosef Omer, tetzeh, she does get divorced. Amar Rabbi Menachem Bar Yosef says, when do I say that she has to get divorced? When the witnesses came, he said, and afterwards she got married. But if she got married and only afterwards did the other 2 witnesses, which were conflicting witnesses, come, lo tetzeh, she cannot get divorced. She does not get divorced. She does not go out. Michdi, so let us see, treu treninu. You got 2 against 2. Right? So therefore, when you have 2 against 2, right, since you have conflicting evidence, so this woman is a safek eshetish. So if a person has relations with her, he's going to be chayav an asham talui. Remember, an asham is a guilt offering. Asham talui is the talui, we're not sure whether yes or not. So here, for sure, it's not an accident. Hatat is an accident. An asham, right, is a guilt offering. It's done purposely. But here it's talui because maybe she is divorced, maybe she's not divorced, maybe she is married or not married, because maybe he died or not. So because that's an asham talui, yeah. So that's why the Gemara says, Amar Rav Sheshet, she got married to one of her witnesses. You remember we learned this. So since she got married to one of her witnesses, so he's not going to be chayav an asham talui because he knows bevadaut that the husband either died or divorced her. So since he knows bevadaut, there's no asham talui. So says the Gemara, he gufa be'asham talui kaima. Says 1 second. Even if the husband, the second husband, is for sure, right? But she herself is mitzupeket. She doesn't know. It's a second husband, right? Meaning that the ed, he knows. And if you remember, we asked then, how could she get married to the edim? Remember? We asked. Usually she's not allowed to get married to the edim, right? But we asked that then. So it says the Gemara, be'omeret barili. It says no. When she says barili, she says that she also is 100% sure that the first husband already died. Amar Rabbi Yochanan says, two people say that the husband died, and 2 people say they didn't die. There's a lot of say she's not allowed to get married. Even he said that she got married, Lotet says she doesn't get divorced. 2 people say that she got divorced, and 2 people say she didn't get divorced. Harezu says she's not supposed to get married. Even he said that if she does get married, she gets divorced. What's the difference between the Reisha and the Seifa? Why is it that when the case where you have Ediyot Sotrot, which means conflicting evidence about the death of the husband, Rabbi Yochanan says that if she gets married, she doesn't get divorced. And to do with the Girushin, if she does get married, she does get divorced. What's the difference? They're both the exact same thing. Whether she got divorced or didn't she get divorced, or he dropped dead or he didn't drop dead. At the end of the day, it's conflicting evidence, 2 against 2. Why is it in the first case about the husband dropping dead, he said she doesn't have to get divorced, and in the second case of the Girushin, he says that she does have to get divorced. So says the Gemara, Abaye says, Tirgema be'ed echad. We're talking about, in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, we're not talking about 2 witnesses and 2 witnesses. But rather, we're talking about one ed that said that he got divorced or the husband died, and the other ed comes and he goes against it. So therefore, in such a case, so therefore, when the rabbis came and they believed one witness, they believed him like 2 witnesses. Meaning, when one witness comes and he says that the husband died, since the rabbis believe that one witness, so now it makes it like 2 witnesses. Says, anytime that the Torah believes one witness, so it's like 2 witnesses. So this witness that he's saying that he didn't die, is only 1. So it's 1 against 2. Meaning, even though it's 1 against 1, it's really 1 against 2, because the first person that came and he said the husband died, we believe in like 2 witnesses. So the fact that we believe in like 2 witnesses, when the second one witness comes and he says that he didn't die, it's 1 against 2. So says the Gemara, Yachiv, so if you go 1 against 2, even lechatchila she should get married. Why do we say lechatchila don't get married, but if she did get married, don't get divorced? Even lechatchila she should get married. Says no, mishum de Ravasi, because of Ravasi. Dama Ravasi says Ravasi, haser mimechai kshut peh, ulzut sfatayim harchek mimeka. What does that mean? Don't do something where people are going to suspect you. Meaning, a person should not come and do something which people are going to start suspecting you of different things. So it says here, remove from yourself the ikum of the peh, which means mutzia diba, people that speak bad. Velezut sfatayim, or people that they come and they're speaking bad with their sfatayim. Harchek mimcha, don't do something which people are going to start saying that you're doing an averah. So because of that, even though you're right, mitzad halacha, it's like 1 against 2. But lechatchila, don't put yourself in such a scenario. Don't do something that people are going to start speaking about you the entire rest of your life, that you're doing an averah because you went with this woman, right? Seifa, and the Seifa though is there's 1 witness that says the divorce, 1 witness says it doesn't get divorced. They're both testifying about a married woman. So therefore, what happens is that the Torah didn't believe 1 person here. It's not that because of the guna or things like that. So therefore, because of this thing, right, the one that says the Nidgarsha is going to be 1, and therefore the words of 1 person is not going to go instead of 2 people. And that's why even B'diavad, they would have to get divorced. Rava comes and he says, Leolam Trei Utrei, which means like this. If you remember, we said that really, we're talking about 2 against 2. Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Yochanan, the Varash Rabbi Menachem Yosef. So comes Rabbi Yochanan, he appeared to him in the words of Rabbi Menachem Yosef beGirushin, velo ra'a b'mita, but he didn't appear to him the words of by mita. My tama, what's reasoning? Mita ena yochola mechashato. Because by mita, she cannot say metata. So therefore, we're going to say that if the woman was not 100% betucha that he was met, she would be afraid to get married again. But by Girushin, by Girushin, she could say, what are you talking about? You divorced me. Meaning that machashato, hachasha. Basically, that by Girushin, why were we more machmir in Girushin than mita? Mita, what's she going to say? I thought you died. Like what? You did die. He's chai v'kayam. He's right in front of you. By Girushin, she could come and she could say, right, what are you talking about? You divorced me. Or you're going to tell me you divorced me. So because of that, he was much more strict in Girushin than in Mita. So ask the Gemara, right? A woman could be chutzpanit. But she could be that chutzpanit, she could say that you divorced me and he didn't divorce her. Right? Rav Hamnuna says, imagine a woman comes to the Bedin and she says that her husband divorced her in front of his face. She's believed. Why? Wow. There's a chazakah. The chazakah is that a woman does not have an azut panim in front of her husband. A woman is going to come and say in front of the husband, you divorced me and it wasn't true. She doesn't have the audacity. The chutzpah doesn't exist. So says the Gemara, that's only if there's no witnesses that actually help her. But if in the case where there's a deem that help her, then she is going to be meizah l'sheket, which means that Rabbi Yochanan comes and he says, even if she already got married, she has to get divorced. Why? Because if she has witnesses, even though they're false witnesses, but keilu, there's witnesses that are behind her back saying that she did get divorced, she would be meizah, because now she has witnesses, keilu, right? So therefore, that's why she would actually come and she would do this. Says the Gemara, Ravasi says, Kegon de'amri edim achshav met, achshav gidusha. Here we're talking about only in a case where Rabbi Yochanan is speaking about where the edim come and say that he died right now. He died today. Or he divorced her right today. So therefore there's going to be a difference, right? The what? Mita leka levrura. To do with the death, you can't know if it's bemet true or not. Right? Was it one that they said, he just drowned? Or a lion ate him up? You can't find the body. So you can't find the body now. That's why, right? That's why he's saying that Rabbi Yochanan is going to be posek, that if he already got divorced, if she already got married, and she says for sure, so she doesn't get out. But Girushin, by Girushin, you could investigate. They tell her, if that's bemet what happened, where's your get? You got divorced today. Where's your get? Right? She used today. To do with death, they ate the lion. The lion ate him. Go look for him. Right? Or he drowned. Like meat. Go look for him. You understand? So tell Rabbi, we also learned in the Braita, two people come and they say that she got married, and two people say that she didn't get married. Those two say she doesn't get married. He said that if she doesn't get married, she doesn't get divorced. Two people say that she got divorced, two people say that she didn't get divorced. Say she doesn't get married. He said, but if she doesn't get married, she does get divorced. What's the difference between the first case and the second case? Which means, what is the difference between the two? First of all, you have a duyot sotrot by the kiddushin. And there we said that she does get married, she doesn't get divorced. And in the other case, to do the gerushin, we said that she does get divorced. What's going on? So before we were asking from mita to gerushin. Now we're asking from kiddushin to gerushin. Okay? So Amar Abaye comes as Kaf Gimel Amud Aleph on the top. Amar Abaye is going to answer Tirgema be'edecha. We're talking about one witness, and then we're going to continue from there.
Excuse